Hello everyone and welcome to the European Parliament here in Brussels. My name is Maria and together with Robert we invite you to join this live chat with the freshly elected President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola. Welcome, President Metsola, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, and a warm welcome to everyone who just tuned in on our live stream on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and on LinkedIn. Many of you have already sent us questions, so thank you very much for that. We'll try to put as many as we can to President Metsola, but if you haven't done so yet, in the comment sections, you can still do it in the next 30 minutes.
So first of all, congratulations on your election. You are the third female president of the European Parliament and also the youngest ever. What does all this mean to you?
Well, first of all, it's a great honor and a privilege to have been entrusted with a big responsibility from my colleagues just 3 weeks ago. Feels like much longer than these 3 weeks. It was also a message that in this parliament, in this campaign, you had a number of women running for this post, whereby this institution said it was about time. It's been 20 years since a woman headed this post. And what I said in my introductory speech, that I will do everything to ensure that no more 20 years will pass for there to be another woman. But it is not just about me, it is not only about image, it's now about making sure that the equality we work for and we represent is taken out of this parliament and also implemented in different member states so that people looking into this parliament from outside can see in this parliament something that they can also do.
You are also the first Maltese president of a European institution. On this, Vasco Medeiros on LinkedIn would like to know how you feel about it.
Well, first of all, I thank Vasco. He is not the first one to ask me this question. I come from an island in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, a very proud island and also one that worked very hard to join the European Union and be an equal partner around the table with so many other countries, bigger than Malta, but that also have recognized the fact that we have values and rights that we all share, and it is those that we fought for in my generation when we engaged in a battle at the time to join the European Union. That meant that those rights have to continue to be protected, and that's what matters actually also to the citizens of my country when they look at the European Union and everything it represents.
Today at the Parliament, a new public opinion survey was released, also to measure the sentiment of people on the work of the European Parliament. And public health was one of the main topics, actually the priority number one that citizens think the Parliament should address. What is it's also fueled by the pandemic, of course, but what is your assessment of the management of this pandemic by the EU? And what should be done, you think, to tackle future crises?
Yeah, I think these kind of surveys where we tap into citizens' concerns and listen to them as to what they want the European Parliament to do are some of the most effective tools that we have that we need to use and respond to. And as you said, the pandemic has led to people analysing their concerns, understanding that health is a priority. Also, coincidentally, an area where the European Union until today does not have a lot of competence, but even though there is not that competence, when it mattered, all the European Union member states, all the members of parliament in this house got together and said, we have to do something about it. We need to make sure that we join forces on equipment, then on vaccines, on rolling out the vaccines as quickly as possible. That there was no citizen, no one living in the European Union, no matter how far away from Strasbourg or Brussels, no matter how far away from the capital city of his or her country they live in, they said, I have equal access to all the services provided. That came because the European Union led, and this European Parliament was at the forefront in leading that charge.
Climate change should be another priority for the European Parliament, according to what Europeans answered in this public opinion survey as well. This especially concerns younger generations who chose climate change as a top priority. So to answer to Sarah, Valerio and Hailey from Instagram, is the European Union doing enough to meet the climate targets?
The European Union is never doing enough to meet climate targets. Why? This is an urgency. We cannot wait any longer to say this is something that can be done by a future generation. And it is no wonder that our younger generation tell us you need to tackle it now. This is something that they can feel. As I said, I come from an island. It is also extremely visible to us, for whoever lives close to the sea and can feel the changes happening every day. This Parliament has been very ambitious. It will continue to be ambitious. It has gone further and also in pushing other institutions in this town and going further in its targets. Now we need to implement them. It is no longer about agreeing on big words. We have laws on the table now and we need to negotiate them and put them forward so that we really rethink where we get our energy from, rethink how we're going to make sure that there are no big gaps in the accessibility and the margin of poverty in different member states is also addressed. After the pandemic, new sectors of society have become even more and more isolated. All this brought together are what the young people are telling us to fix, and it is up to us because we are the last generation that can fix that.
I'm coming back to the pandemic, which has exacerbated inequalities in the EU. 22% of the population affected by poverty and social exclusion. Fighting poverty is also the third priority for the citizens, according to this same survey for the Parliament to tackle. What do you think? Talk to us about the role that the EU can play in tackling these issues.
First of all, we just mentioned legislation. You are right that when we see the numbers and the effects that the pandemic has had, even on the mental health of our citizens, top priority for a lot of countries that has to be addressed. Increased poverty mostly, and I have to say that the gender also plays, that more women have suffered as a result of the pandemic because of their inability to re-enter the market. More domestic violence incidents have been reported because of people having been locked down in their homes. So the first role of the European Parliament, I believe, is to bring that awareness to the fore so that when it comes to elections, when it comes to decisions that are being taken, when it comes to discussing the conference on the future of Europe, which we are currently all together saying, where does the European Union want to go? What have we done so far? Where have we failed? But where have we succeeded? There, this European Parliament can say we can do more. And in fact, when we're talking about the unprecedented amount of funds that were approved just behind me, a few meters away in the plenary chamber in Brussels here, but also in Strasbourg, we agreed on an unprecedented amount of funds that would go into the economic recovery. But this includes social measures. This could include the green transition, the digital transformation. All of these matter in making sure that we can plug the gaps that are still so apparent in some member states more than others. Another thing that I think we need to do more of is continue the awareness on vaccination. The vaccination rate in too many member states remains too low. And as we have said since the beginning, nobody is safe until everybody is safe. That still remains the case today, even as national governments and even this institution is only starting to come out of a very difficult couple of years. But it needs to take leadership and it needs to take solidarity between our peoples.
And we have noticed that the lifting of restrictions in some member countries is different, and it has also been the concern of many people who commented on our posts. You also have continuously delivered very bold statements, and I quote, against those who deny rights to the LGBTIQ community. But despite the freedoms we enjoy, not every LGBTIQ person living in the EU enjoys the same rights as in, for example, your home country, Malta, which has one of the most progressive LGBTIQ laws in Europe. So what do you think the Parliament can do to promote more inclusive legislation?
I tell you something, the first thing I worked on in this Parliament when I arrived 9 years ago as a member was an anti-homophobia roadmap for the European Parliament and the European Union. I must tell you that if I had known then from 2013 the advances we would make specifically because of resolutions and recommendations made in this Parliament by big majorities of members coming from all political groups, I would not have believed you. But today, I think that it is thanks also to a very bold generation of politicians that have broken barriers in their member state and said, if I have fought so much for my rights to be equal to those in other member states, then I expect my politicians and my representatives to deliver on that. There are, of course, certain areas where things fall within the competence of member states. But this European Parliament has been very, very vocal also in making sure, for example, when there was the LGBTIQ-free zones in Poland, we were the institution that adopted an extremely strong resolution condemning that backsliding of rights in Poland at that specific moment. And, of course, it takes... You say bold, but it also takes a responsibility. We are elected not just to say things that are, you know, comfortable or easy to say. Sometimes you get elected also to do things that are difficult, that are unpopular, so to speak, not in this area, but in other areas. If we have a responsibility to making sure that human rights are seen and observed everywhere, that you have the freedom to love who you want to love and live where you want to live across our union, then we have to be the ones, the beacons that guarantee that.
Indeed, the fight against gender inequality and discrimination has also been other of your closest political concern, and this is also a priority for young people. So what would be your ideal equality policy?
Well, for me is that where I see inequality, this European Parliament needs to act. And this is in all areas. We see, for example, still that women get paid much less than men across the European Union. In some cases better than others, but in some cases much worse than others. This European Parliament has been very vocal in that area, also by being an example. One of the things that I have committed to, for example, is to make sure that even within the administration of this Parliament, you have as much equality and pluralism between genders and political representation that matters also and reflects the proportional representation of this House, because that's how you have to take decisions, not only by preaching, but to do them inside your own house. And of course, I get asked a lot by journalists, but are you going to do that everywhere? And my answer is very clear and unequivocal. I will take this position in every single member state, in every city I go in the European Union.
We got many questions about sexual and reproductive rights and health. What's Parliament's position on this?
On this, I can continue just where I left off. The Parliament's position is extremely clear. The rights have to be enjoyed and promoted everywhere, and that is the position that I will promote as European Parliament President. That is what I committed to, and that is why there are at the moment negotiations on the so-called Simone Veil Pact that seeks to promote rights, but also bring member states closer together, keeping in mind member states' competence on this matter. But on this, my position is clear. My position is that of the European Parliament.
More than half of EU citizens stated in this public survey that they want Parliament to have a stronger role in the EU. On this, Lian on Instagram asked, what can be done to strengthen the Parliament's role on the EU?
We have a golden opportunity now, first of all, to transform into a modern, effective and efficient Parliament. We have learned a lot during the pandemic. We are now looking into the opportunities of what we learned, not only in using it in the way we work here, in the way we negotiate, in the way we communicate our decisions, but also in being a model for other parliaments across the world. Concretely, we would like to do more in terms of legislative initiative. You know, there is a possibility for this Parliament, to initiate laws. We know, because we are the only directly elected institution, that there are gaps in our legislative arsenal, so to speak, what we can do. Citizens are asking us to do more. Let's make sure we don't hide behind political inability or sometimes unwillingness by saying there is no solution. I am a fixer and I've always wanted to find solutions to problems which seem unsurmountable. But we have been here before. There was a time when this Parliament was not a co-legislator, when this Parliament used to simply give consent, sign on the dotted line whenever there was a law that was adopted across the road. Now we are co-legislators. Now we have equality in the way we do laws. And I think that we need to make sure that that role is pushed, reinforced, and also delivers on what our citizens want us to legislate upon. And sometimes, you know, there's a gap between what we are doing when we say it and what we do. I want to shorten that gap and be more relevant.
Anna Bondi from Instagram asks, what are the 3 most important things we must do, and she puts in brackets, besides Eurovision, I agree with her, to make Europe more united?
Eurovision is important, big,
absolutely,
big.
Indeed.
Totally agreed.
In my country too. I think on climate we need to do more. On health, as we said, we need to do more. But also I think we could be more coherent and consistent in foreign policy. We have so many people messaging us from all over on Facebook and on Instagram telling us, I would like to hear a coherent voice. I live in a country which is worried about a neighboring country that is not a member of the European Union and seeks to trample on my rights, seeks to destabilize the Union. I think we can do more. And thanks to Anna for asking the question on a foreign policy perspective. This European Parliament has long held very strong positions. I think it's about time also to align those positions with the other institutions, because the competence is the same and we can really deliver not only in political statements but tangible results in expressing solidarity with those people.
There is also a nice question from Vincenzo from Instagram, and it says, is it still possible to make the dream of our founding fathers come true, namely of a Europe as an only and united community of politics and defense?
Well, this is something that occurs every time we discuss issues where we have failed, where we have succeeded. And in reality, he is right, Vincenzo, by saying, listen, we have been talking about this for decades and we still have not delivered, and there are gaps in our capacity to act in a united manner. At the moment, there are talks of the so-called strategic autonomy. What does Europe do where other parts of the world don't act? Or if they act, how do we defend ourselves? How do we help those individual member states that need solidarity? Here you have a delicate path of analyzing different statuses of different member states where they stand, but this European Parliament has always also been very clear in expressing solidarity with those people who look to Europe, as they did to the founding fathers, as the beacon of hope, prosperity, democracy, but ultimately of rights.
The same survey released today also notes that for EU citizens, democracy is important. But to protect this democracy, also, as you said, to protect it from what's coming from outside, disinformation, from the third parties, from actors, foreign actors, is imminent in Europe, and the EU is fighting it. So Mark Oliver asks, what should the EU's response be to targeted campaigns, especially those funded by Russia, for example?
Disinformation and misinformation by authoritarian regimes is something that is becoming, let's say, more tangible, influencing elections, looking into spreading fake truth, and even as we see, destabilizing governments that are constructive in order to try to emerge from this pandemic. We see also a need to counter that narrative at the extreme ends of the political spectrum, which try to misuse this information, again, to destabilize or spread fake news, such as, for example, rising energy prices are because of the Green Deal proposals on the table, which is, of course, not a reality. In this Parliament, we have set up a committee that was set up precisely to discuss and how to combat this misinformation and disinformation. We have been discussing this with tech giants and social media operators and network operators in order to see how to protect the most vulnerable members of our society, especially our children, who are, who have sometimes been seen as victims of such misuse of data and misinformation. The report, and I look very much forward to reading it, is presented to our Parliament in March, and then we will take the steps forward from there.
You have already mentioned that we need to bring Europe closer to towns and to villages across Europe. And Romain from Instagram would like to know how to reconnect European institutions to citizens.
If I can tell you what my favorite part of being an MEP, a member of the European Parliament, is to enter a school and discuss with children of all ages why they should believe in politics, why politics is not a bad word, why if you vote, it makes a difference. Why? Because if you don't vote, people who you might not feel represented by will fill that gap and take decisions that you don't like or are not good for you. The reaction of going and doing that, not only in your member state, but in each and every part of the European Union, and I had already started doing that when I was Vice President, and I will definitely continue to do that now as President, is priceless, because they get to see that European Union is not only about what happens in this building, it's not only about what happens in our building in Strasbourg or also in Luxembourg, where we also have workforce, people who work for the European Parliament who live and work in Luxembourg, but that you go out of these cities into the member states and say, I'm here, ask me what you want, and I'm here to deliver. And it could be the most rural, far away part from the capital of a country. It is so important that the European Union is present and the European Parliament represents everybody living on our territory.
Actually, on this, we have a question as well by Anda Circa from Instagram, and she wonders how difficult it is to succeed in politics as a woman.
I think I have to thank women who came before me for having worked so hard to break those ceilings, those barriers, in order for me and my colleagues in this House. 40% members are women. We need to have more. But if you look at the current composition of the Bureau, the Vice Presidents, more women than men. So different scenario to what has been for all these decades. It is us that we need to thank for the example, for the effort of those women who came before us, and on whose shoulders, as I said in my speech when I got elected, we stand with pride, with honor, but with an obligation to make sure that we pass on this overcome challenge, still many challenges to go, to the women and girls who come after us.
For those young girls who are watching us now, what would be the advice you could give them right now?
Make sure your voice is heard. Never wait for somebody else to talk for you. You have a voice that can be as loud, and the integrity of your argument can matter irrespective of where you come from, where you live, which country you are currently in. You could be traveling, you could be working, you could be visiting another member state, but you could be in your house today watching after you've come back from school, after you've come back from work, or if you're still at work and connected to the European Parliament to see what you are doing. Make sure you make your voice heard.
For many people, maybe do not know that you are married to a Finn. So your family is truly European from south to north.
Absolutely.
But there must be some cultural difference, or that one cultural difference that you still find odd, even after these years.
You know, we say united in diversity. I think that is a very good statement to explain my marriage. I met my husband from Finland when we were in youth politics, when I was doing actually a lot of the same things I'm doing now in seeking a role of convincing people to vote and engage themselves from the ground in a campaign. Cultural difference? Linguistic there is for sure. I would say perhaps not the sauna, you know, this is a very specific Finnish, Nordic, but mostly Finnish tradition, which my husband engages in very actively. I have learned to get accustomed to that. But they also have this very weird thing of digging a hole in the ice and jumping into it. I'm never going to do that.
Not for a Mediterranean.
Never.
And maybe before we wrap up, there is a question from Liz Lindberg on LinkedIn. She asks how young people can contribute or engage in the future of the European Union.
They have the opportunity to do that now. It's not only about voting. We are currently engaged in discussions on the Conference on the Future of Europe. Big panels given and dedicated to young people in a lot of member states, whether it is online. A lot of panels have taken place online, but in a lot of countries they are taking place with big communication possibilities in presence. Send your messages, we will listen to them. It's our responsibility, because in 2024 I need to convince, together with my colleagues here, that this place is worth keeping because we work for you.
And thanks for mentioning the conference on the future of Europe, which is still ongoing.
Absolutely.
And ideas are taking shape now and will be soon presented to the European Parliament. So hopefully
Absolutely.
you will
Keep
be
them
also...
coming.
Exactly, keep them coming. And you have also promised that you will come back to our live chats.
Yes,
so
of course.
we hope to have you back soon. Thank you so much.
Looking forward. Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who has followed this live stream.
Thank you so much, President Metsola, and thank you everyone for tuning in.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.
Bye.